Welcome. You're listening to This Indulgent Life, the podcast, with me, Mary Cook, and this is episode number 15. Today on the podcast, I'm here with my husband, Alan Cook, of Alan Cook Video Productions, and we are talking about moving dogs abroad. So, for those of you who don't know, we have 2 large dogs, and we brought them with us from the United States to Hong Kong and brought them back again. So today we're going to go over what we had to do to bring them to Hong Kong and what we had to do to bring them back. So stay tuned. Welcome to another episode of This Indulgent Life, where together wanderlusting families navigate respectful parenting, education, and fulfilling our dreams of having an extraordinary life through travel. We believe that life shouldn't just be an obligation, and that the American dream isn't the same for everyone. We believe that life should be an indulgence, so cherished and enjoyed. And the best way to do that is through enjoying experiences together and following our hearts. May you be inspired to do the same. So welcome back, and thank you for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you here. Before we get started with moving the dogs back and forth across the ocean, I just wanted to remind you that you can find all of the show notes and links to the places that we're talking about at thisindulgentlife.com/15. That's 15. So again, thisindulgentlife.com/15. And please remember, it's really important for the life of the podcast, I guess, in order to get the word out, that you subscribe using your favorite podcast platform and leave an honest rating and review, especially in iTunes. That would really be helpful. And it helps me to know what you're liking and what I need to do more of. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure you subscribe on YouTube and leave a comment down in the below. Thank you so much. Oh, and don't forget about the new Facebook group. Really looking forward to building that up as a resource for everybody. And you can find that at facebook.com/Family Travel and Adventure Tribe. Family Travel Adventure Tribe. Sorry about that. We'll put it in the show notes.
That's right.
It's always in the show notes or in the description. Anyway, just wanted to make sure that was said because I really want to connect with everybody. Thank you. Okay, so if you have been listening to the podcast or watching on YouTube for any length of time now, you will have heard episode 4 and episode, I believe it was 6. Episode 4 is our big announcement about the fact that we're moving back to the U.S. You go check it out for more information. And episode 6, I believe, was about why we chose Hong Kong. And one of the major reasons why we chose Hong Kong was because we could bring the dogs. And so we're going to just go into how that looked. So the way that we kind of found out if we could bring the dogs or not was by searching a few websites. And because Hong Kong is a Class 2 country, as well as the U.S., it made the transition really, really easy. Some places you might need to do quarantine. So what we're talking about today is going to be specifically for Hong Kong and specifically for the time periods that we did the move. So please make sure you go and do your own research and double check all the information here. Don't just go by this, but it will give you an idea of what to expect.
Unfortunately, at the time of this, when we first moved them, certain things we could do. Now, when we had to move them back, there's certain things we couldn't do. We'll explain more later.
Yeah. So just double check because things change. All right. So the very first thing that we really need to cover is paperwork. In order to get your dog anywhere, you basically have to create what they call a pet passport. And it's not like you actually go and apply for a passport like you would, for a person. but it is a stack of documents that allow government officials to make sure that your dog is healthy and that you own them, and just make sure everything is in order. So the very first thing that we did was the import permit. And we thought, when we moved here, we thought we were going to bring the dogs with us automatically. We had planned for all that, and we had gotten quotes, and let's say couldn't find a place cheap enough that allowed dogs or big enough. You had to fly, in order to bring a dog into, or a pet into Hong Kong, you have to fly them cargo, which is a whole other airplane sometimes. And the costs. I remember that we would just keep seeing the cost of their tickets increase. Like, it was just like every time we called to get bookings, the cost would increase, like triple.
They did it again this time too. Going back.
It's just, so whatever you think you're going to end up spending, you might want to triple that number, because it is not cheap. We have spent more on our dogs to go here and back than we have the three of us to go here and back like 3 times.
Pretty much.
So definitely double check that. So the import permit, so back to that, sorry. Because we thought we were going to bring them, I actually had contacted a teacher at the school that I was, coming to teach at. And we Western Union money to her, and she went and actually did the import permit for us. It's not that expensive, and it's not that difficult, but it's much easier to do it in person than to try and do it online. And the government website, which I'll link, has all of that information. So it's really not difficult. It's just, if you can have somebody either do it for you or do it yourself when you're here and then bring your animals later, that might be easiest. And of course, your dog is going to need their vaccinations updated. Hong Kong does 3-year vaccinations. So if your vet or clinic allows it, go ahead and do the 3-year vaccinations. You also need a microchip. And here's the thing. Each country, sometimes each state and whatever, have different microchips. Like the number of numbers, I guess. Like a 9-digit or 11-digit. I think there's maybe even like a 7-digit.
So, like in the U.S., there's the maximum amount of digits, which I think is the 11-digit or something like that. But here in Hong Kong, they use, I think, the older version, which is like a 9-digit or something.
Either way, basically, there are so many different kinds of microchips, but you have to have your dog microchipped, and you need those numbers, and they need to be with your vaccinations. The problem is, we thought we had the right one, and I guess we didn't. But they were really good about it. Once we got to Hong Kong, they just gave them a new microchip.
Now Duke has 3 microchips.
Yeah, so that means Bear has 2 microchips and Duke has 3 microchips, which I feel really bad about. But it doesn't seem to be affecting him. And at least we have 3 different numbers we can find him by, I guess. Not many dogs are going to have that. So if he ever gets lost and somebody tries to claim him, that's going to be quite easy, I guess. The benefits. But anyway, just make sure your dog is microchipped. Make sure you have those numbers. Again, do your research, see which one they're using at the time, because it may change. Once you have all of this information and you have your import permit, you can go ahead and book your flights. Again, it has to be cargo. In order to be on the flight, however, they will need a health certificate. The health certificate is their kind of like exit permit, I guess you could say. It is that little passport paper. It states that your dog is healthy. It states what breed they are, because there are breed restrictions here in Hong Kong and on airlines. And it has to be notarized, at least ours had to be notarized by the state. So we went with Palmetto Animal Hospital in Williamston, South Carolina, and it was Dr. Lambert. And that's something that our kennel that we had left our dogs with actually took care of for us.
Mm-hmm.
And we had nothing but positive reviews from the kennel and from the friend that drove him to the airport for us. He said that they actually called our friend and made sure that everything went well, that he knew exactly what he had to do, who to contact to get the paperwork notarized, and there was all of this. It was extra, and you definitely need to make sure that you are following the rules of your state to make sure that it's done properly. Call the airlines, your pet relocation company, whatever. We were lucky that we didn't need a pet relocation company to move here. However, that's changed for most airlines. So make sure that you look that up. And that's going to be an extra, probably a couple $1,000 expense.
Now, come to Hong Kong, we have to fly cargo, but going to other countries, you might not have to fly cargo.
Yeah.
Just check your country's restrictions and everything like that.
But a lot of airlines are starting to require that no matter what, or require you to use a pet relocation company no matter what the country you're going to. It's not just about the requirements of the country anymore, but the requirements of the airline. We loved United, but the problem is they are no longer accepting dogs without a pet relocation company, and they are not accepting dogs in that extra large kennel. So that left them out. We thought we would use them again when we ran into problems this time, but they just got too many restrictions now. But they did do a really good job when we used them. So I guess that's part of the cargo issues. We had initially looked at, I think, Cathay. Was it Cathay or Air Canada?
One of the two.
I think it was Cathay Cargo. And it was just a disaster. Every time we called, we got a completely different price. Like, by thousands of dollars different price sometimes. Like, first time we called, it was like $800 a dog. And then next time we would call, it would be like $3,000 a dog. To say I had anxiety about all of this, especially because I'd already signed a contract, we'd already booked our tickets. It was, and dogs to us are family, so we don't leave them behind. So it was really, really difficult, and I remember just feeling completely defeated because when we moved here, we had no money. Like, we literally got here by the grace of God.
Yeah.
And we just had to find something else. And luckily we did find United, and that went much smoother. They were able to give a fixed quote that was about mid-range. I think it ended up being, $1,400 a dog?
Something like that.
Yeah, it was about $1,400 a dog. So still more than we had initially planned, but still half the cost of Cathay.
Luckily, our dogs are cute, so everybody loves them.
So because we couldn't bring them with us, we left them in a kennel. We had initially planned to leave them with a friend, but she got sick and couldn't do it. We didn't want to leave them with family because they wouldn't allow the dogs inside. And we ran out of options. So we had no really other options. So we ended up finding a kennel, and it was the cheapest one we could find. But they used the same dog food. They were really, really friendly. It was kind of like a family-owned business. And they did a fabulous job with our dogs. It's called Lindsay's Kennel in Piedmont, and the owner is Bobby. And I really enjoyed them. They would actually, remember they sent us that picture?
Yep. I think either the woman who worked there, or she was the owner's daughter, or whatever, or wife. They would send pictures. The dogs playing and running.
They even let us FaceTime once. One of the workers there had an iPhone, and they let us FaceTime with our dogs at one point. And, we had actually booked them together in a kennel, but when they realized that Bear was eating all of Duke's food, they had actually separated them into different kennels and didn't charge us anything extra.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the benefit was Duke ended up losing a lot of his fat.
Oh, man.
And that saved us money in the end run because he wouldn't weigh as much. He had lost a good amount of weight, like a healthy, good amount of weight.
Yeah, so he went from, like, when we first got Duke, like, from skin and bones to, like, super, like, chunky monkey fat. Then he went to, like, normal dog weight.
And then he was back to super donkey fat, despite all his walks, so. I don't know how they did it, but I would like to know. So all of that went well. The kennel also took care of bringing them to the vet for us and getting the health certificate done, communicating with our friend, Greg. And then Greg came and picked them up, and it was time to take them to Atlanta from South Carolina to bring them to the airport. I had made everything all nice and packaged and ready for them. I had individual pictures of the dogs with their name and their age and a little bit of information about them so people are aware in case something happened. So for Bear, it was like really lovable. I forget what the rest was, but there wasn't much. Just really lovable. For Duke, really friendly, but will try to escape. I'll find the photo and I'll put it in the show notes. Our friend, Greg, he brought them to the airport, and of course there's lots of paper. He said that there was lots of paperwork for him to fill out. I think he said it took him about 2 hours. Lots of 10 pages to sign and things like that. And while he was there, the lady was like, "Oh, they look friendly enough. They're so cute. Why don't you let them out and run around while they're waiting so they don't have to stay in their kennels?" Which was great and so nice, and the dogs loved it. And then Duke jumped up on the weight scale and found an opening out to, what is that called? The tarmac area, I guess.
Yeah.
And started running off. He darted off, and then Bear took up after him because Bear does that. And let's just say our dogs almost got lost at the airport. Luckily, they were able to run after them and finally get them, but our poor friend was so scared that he had lost our dogs, and luckily no one got hurt. But funny story. Make sure you leave those little descriptions on there so people know if your dog is a runner like ours.
Yep.
And then they flew. They had to stop they went from Atlanta to Newark, and then they had to stop overnight. So United actually had somebody take care of them, feed and water them and let them go to the bathroom, things like that. And then in the morning, they flew from Newark to Hong Kong straight. There's paperwork that the pilots have to sign saying that it was a nonstop flight, that they didn't stop at any countries, things like that. But the airlines take care of that for you. And then once they got here, which it was actually delayed, we had to go pick them up at the cargo terminal. And we had the best neighbors ever. Oh, I miss that spot. We lived up on this mountainside where nobody else was except for this old lady, and her brother would come and visit, and we called him Tall Man. That's his nickname, Tall Man. And
that's what it literally translates to from Chinese, I think.
Well, that's his nickname. That's what they call him in Chinese.
Yeah.
And he had a car, and we didn't at the time, or we had just got one, but it was too small, something like that. And he took us all the way there. He waited with us because the flight was delayed. He waited with us for a couple hours. And it was just so nice of him. I mean, the people here, especially the older people, can be so sweet and so helpful when you need them. And so he took us. We got the dogs. They got their new microchips and everything else. And it was so nice to be reunited with them. And that was it, guys. That was literally it. They gave us the information. They sent us their tags later. And that was that easy. Once all the paperwork's in order, they just double check it all. Make sure the dog is healthy. Make sure we have all the information we need. And then they send us on our way. And that was it. No quarantine. No, none of that. Because we had all our paperwork in order. And we come from a Class 2 country. And we had them here for 4 years. Almost. Just shy of 4 years. Like a week short of 4 years. We've moved them 3 times. Two, 3 times. 2 times.
2 times.
2 times. 3 if you include to Hong Kong, I guess. And we just had to bring them back because, again, we ran into problems. We had everything worked out. We knew exactly what to do. We had done the research yet again. To fly back to the U.S., they don't require very much at all.
Just rabies?
Yeah, just rabies.
And unless you come from the country that requires like a screw worm test vaccine thing, then other than that, it's just rabies.
Hong Kong is like so good as far as being able to bring pets. So you can fly to any other Class 2 country without a quarantine. I think places like Taiwan, UK, Australia that are like Class 1 countries, obviously you will.
And Hawaii.
Yeah, and Hawaii. But those ones you need anyway, unless you're coming from another Class 1. That doesn't really matter. But it was so easy. There wasn't much that we had to do. Our airlines, we looked on the website for airlines, and it said they took dogs as, excess baggage. We had actually chosen a specific date with a specific airline so that we could fly with our dogs. And then everything just kind of crumbled. We were flying with Air Canada, and I called to book their spot once our tickets were booked. And I go, oh yeah, we have room, but you won't know if you can take them until that day because of weather restrictions. I'm like, what? What do you mean I won't know till that day? I mean, if you know you're taking dogs, don't you just prepare to have the right aircraft? Like, what do you mean? Nope.
It's not the aircraft.
It's is partially the aircraft. That's what they say.
But most aircrafts that are pressurized and temperature controlled. But it's the tarmac. So some airports actually can keep the dogs in a nice controlled environment right before they have to put them on the aircraft so they don't stay out on the tarmac so long. Well, Hong Kong, no. Hong Kong, everything comes out all at once. They stay on if the luggage and stuff stays on the tarmac an hour, it stays on the tarmac an hour. It stays on the tarmac 2 minutes, it stays on the tarmac 2 minutes. There's no controlled environment other than the aircraft and where they came from.
Yeah, so that is a big problem when you're living in Hong Kong, which is a subtropical country, and temperatures can get pretty high. So our plan to bring them home with us, which would have costed us maybe $1,000 US, literally like maybe $1,000 US, all of a sudden became a much bigger ordeal. It went from needing a few pieces of paper and a vaccination to so much more. Mostly due to airlines. Again, it's not the governments that are causing all these problems for us. It's the airlines. So we tried Air Canada Cargo, thinking maybe if we went through them, they would be able to bring the luggage different. It could even be the same airline. Nope, they don't take dogs. Really, because that's not what their website says. It's funny, but they're like, no, we don't take dogs except in Canada. So, with Air Canada not taking the dogs, we had to start looking at a lot of other options. And this time, because I'm working full-time and getting the podcast ready and everything, he took charge of all of that. So why don't you go ahead and discuss the different options that we had to come up with.
So, since Air Canada could not take the dogs, what we did was look at United again. Problem with United is Bear was in the giant crate, the giant size, just because of
His size.
his size, unfortunately. And they couldn't take him because he was in the giant size. Wasn't I don't know what the deal was, but they could not take them.
They just don't anymore. They just refuse to take dogs that size anymore. Plus, you have to use a pet relocation company that they
approve of.
Yeah, which of course is going to be a lot more money.
So then we tried to look at Delta, we tried to look at American Airlines. None of those flew from Hong Kong to the U.S. with a cargo-wise that could take animals. So I went off and looked at Cathay. Normally I wouldn't look at Cathay because a lot of times they would be higher, but we looked at Cathay this time.
And before we did move to Cathay, we did look at some pet relocation companies. But you were looking at about, what, 50,000 Hong Kong dollars, which is over 5,000. Yeah, we bought 5,000.
Yeah.
Or 5,000 US dollars.
Yes.
So, a lot of money.
Yes. And,
so we're looking at Cathay now.
So, yeah. So we're looking at Cathay now, and at first, when you call Cathay, you'll get a multitude of different prices each time you call. First time it was like $400, then it was like $800, and like $1,200, and $1,600, and you're like, and that's per dog, and you're like, well, what price is it going to be? But we want, I'll tell you the price in a minute, but so what I did was, I was like, okay, Cathay is going to be about X amount of dollars. It's going to be the cheapest option, technically.
But really the only option at this point.
Yeah, but the option was to fly from Hong Kong to Newark, New York, Newark, New Jersey area, and drive all the way to South Carolina, which we'll see in a minute. But to get to that point, I had to partially hire up a pet mover person to help with the paperwork and help me with the airport part.
No, we didn't have to hire this person. Let me clarify that. You can do this on your own.
With Cathay.
With Cathay. You just need an exit permit from Hong Kong, just like the import permit. It's not that big of a deal. You got to get the medical certificate just like you did before. It's not a super difficult process. However, we know what Hong Kong can be like, and we just decided it was worth the money to get this mover to make sure that everything was taken care of. Because when you're leaving a country and you have no family behind that could help you out if something happened, you need to make sure that your T's are crossed, your I's are dotted, and everything is good to go. And the best way for us to do that, especially with his temper sometimes, is to hire somebody to take care of it all for us. So we did all the vet stuff and we got all the paperwork together, and then he just took care of all the government and airline stuff here.
Yeah. Well, not really it's basically help out with the airport, because he's been doing this for 20 plus years here. He's, I think, Hong Kong born, or maybe, but he's got a really strong UK accent.
But he knew the language.
Yeah,
he knew the people. They know him. Bear was slightly over what they say your max weight should be, and that was another concern of ours. But he had worked with them, and he said it would be okay, and he was the one taking care of it. So that was another reason why we decided, because it was cheaper to pay him that $500 US and to do all of that for us and work with the government, make sure it was done on time, then for us to have to then figure out what to do with Bear later.
Yeah. So, so right before we had with working with him, we got the dogs their vaccines first. Then after they got their vaccines, it was applied for the Hong Kong dog license again, which is basically just a license to say they're registered and they're okay to be in Hong Kong. But we had to apply for a expedited permit.
And that's just because we were really bad dog parents. That had nothing to do with... If you keep up with that, you'll be fine. That has nothing to do with actually moving a pet, except if you're really bad dog parents like we are and forget to after 3 years. That's the problem with the 3-year rabies shot, is you tend to not remember 3 years later, especially when we were going through a move and 6 weeks of asthma attacks that really wasn't on our radar.
And back problems.
Yeah, so that's our fault. Otherwise, you would already have that and you don't need to worry about it.
Yep.
Because you've kept up with it.
So after the getting of the license stuff, then I had to bring them back. This time it was like 6 or 7 days before the flight. I got their health checked. And then gave all the paperwork to George, he is from International Pet Movers here in Hong Kong. And he then took all the paperwork to the government, got the export permit, got all the other paperwork together. When I was booking my flights and everything for me and the dogs, George recommended that I would fly into Newark and drive down to wherever else I had to go. So then I had to rent a car. So what I did was I just picked a minivan to rent, and I went ahead and reserved that so I could drive down to South Carolina when I flew into Newark.
Because him going, paying for his tickets, paying for the dog's tickets, paying for a rental car, and paying for the gas ended up being cheaper than paying for somebody to go and do all this for us. Now, he doesn't work, so we didn't have to take that expense into account. If he did work and he had to take off work, then obviously it would have been cheaper to use a pet relocation company because it wasn't that much cheaper. But it did end up working out well for us because he also had to renew his license and he helped, get the dog settled and everything. So it did work out well. Ended up being the best option, I think, overall, because now we don't have to worry about all of our luggage. So, you're talking 6 bags or 5 bags of luggage, 1 large box, plus all of our carry-ons. And a toddler. Mm-hmm. And then you add in 2 very large cages, which take up half of a van. I don't know how we would have done it. So it ended up costing us a few thousand US more than I would have liked, but I think in the end it did make the most sense.
Yeah.
So typically you want to make sure that your dogs are used to their kennel. You want to bring it out, give them like a month to get used to it. And we did that before we moved to Hong Kong. We did it. We had them in our living room and we would feed them in the kennel. We had their toys that we would put in the kennel so they could just get used to it and not be so scared of it. And we used to use them on the roof. So when we would go to work, they had a spot. But we haven't really done that in a couple of years. And we didn't plan on sending them, remember, until July. That was our initial plan. And when we booked our tickets late March, we realized that we had a month. We had a month to figure all of this out before airlines started having temperature restrictions and saying no. And so we had to do all of this in a month and figure it out so that we could get them home. Otherwise, you basically have to wait till September. So don't plan on moving your dogs in the summer. Just don't plan on moving your dogs in the summer. So we didn't get them used to their kennels, but luckily they did just fine.
Yeah.
Though I would suggest, obviously, try to get them used to their kennels again.
Yeah. So once I got to the airport,
and we used a van.
And we used a van.
You can rent vans here, which will help you move things.
Yes. So instead of getting a taxi, which would have been a pain, we got a van. Very helpful. She was a very nice lady. We're here at the airport. Yay! So we just got dropped off over here, waiting on the other guy to show up so we can get all this other paperwork going, and then we're gonna get these two little pieces right here. One little pooch, second little pooch. We're gonna get them two little pooches on back to the US of A, back down to South Kakalaki. So, wish me luck. Then once we got to the airport, I actually went to the wrong parking lot because I thought I was in the right one, but no, I didn't. Went to the wrong one. And luckily George came over and helped me. We moved him to the right one. We had to go in Hong Kong airport. It was almost like the back way of going in. It was a weird entrance going in with your pets and other large cargo type stuff. But anyway, we got the back way of going in, but it actually went to the same check-in counter. Once we got to the check-in counter, I had to go to the overweight baggage counter. I mean, it took a little while.
It's about the same 2 hours as it took Greg, right? Like, just having to fill out all the paperwork.
Well, it wasn't even filling out paperwork. It was just they had to fill out paperwork or something, or they had to find paperwork. I'm like, because I had all the paperwork there for them, and they were like, okay, well, let me call, let me check this, let me check that, and it was just about, it was about an hour wait, technically, really and truly, but it was just it helped out getting there a lot earlier than.
Yeah. So you want to get to the airport probably 3 hours prior to takeoff instead of the 2 hours, because it is going to take you a while to get through the process, and you just need to make sure you have that time so you're not stressed out. And let your dogs go to the bathroom before you bring them into the airport.
Alright, so I just dropped off the doggies. That took just a little bit, and made it through all the security stuff, everything. Love the Hong Kong ID card stuff. And then now I'm headed into the airport, just trying to figure everything out, and we're just going to go from there. So just hang on and enjoy the ride.
So I'm checked in now, and now I'm on my way to Newark. I get through security very easy. Got to love the Hong Kong ID because you can go through the gate really easy, especially if you're by yourself.
And I was going to say, when you have little kids that don't have their own ID, it's not like that anymore. But
oh, man.
When it's just you, it's super easy.
Yes. Oh, man, yes.
But anyway, and George, as you said, George actually helped make sure that everything was good in the kennel. He brought pads, I think, and in new food bowls and water bowls that were bigger than the ones that came in that little pack.
They actually had to have like the hamster rabbit feeder water things, but the bigger size.
I didn't know dogs could use those.
Well, Kathy had to have them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So George helped take care of all of that for us, which is great because we didn't know that, and we would have been stuck if we hadn't known that. So it definitely was beneficial, for sure.
Yes. If you never flew before, to have somebody to help you, or if you never flew with your pets before, to have somebody to help you is more than you would ever think. I mean, it's very helpful.
More helpful than you would ever think.
So I'm finally on the plane, as you can see, and now I am waiting to see if I can get an aisle seat because I got the middle seat and I'm the big guy. Yeah. Anyway, there was some craziness with like security and stuff like that, to where they like double checked you right before you boarded to make sure like people didn't mess with your baggage or whatever. But
so that the dogs did really well on the flight. He said they had food and water. The temperature is controlled underneath because they know the dogs are there. And you got to Newark around 10?
Yeah. So my plane landed in Newark. Everything was okay. Landed there a little after 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And flight went good. Went to the carousel, the baggage claim to get my bag. Come to find out that the plane was a little overweight, so they had to take some of the bags off, which got me a little worried because they had to take the dogs off too. Unfortunately, one of my bags didn't make it. They had to FedEx the bag down to the U.S. Not the U.S. They had to FedEx the bag from JFK, which they had to send the bag to, down to South Carolina, which actually took very quick. But anyway, so at Newark, the dogs came out. They brought the dogs out while I was waiting on my bag. Duke was howling, but he was good. The actual pilot, she actually came over and checked on the dog, and then I had to actually get what they call a porter, or a person to help out with the big, large push buggy type things. Of course, those people, you have to pay them a tip or something because that's what you got to do. But I did that, able to do that, and able to get the dogs through customs and everything, which was the easiest customs I have ever been to in the whole United States.
We've been to a few.
It was the easiest. I have never been to a customs so stress-free in the U.S. It was crazy. They were like, yeah, sure, come on, let's go. They checked the paperwork, like, okay, you good. But anyway, once I got to there, at first they were telling me, no, you can't go on the monorail system to get your dogs to the car rental place. I was like, oh man. So I had to get a phone card, call the rental place, and they're like, no, you could take the monorail. I'm like, well, they said they couldn't, but no, yes, you can take it. So I had to then figure out another way to get to the monorail system, or to get to the car thing. But kind of found out I could take the monorail system, and I took that. Sorry, I'm all over the place. Quit laughing at me. So I had another person help me to the monorail platform station, and I got there. I kept the dogs in the cages, unfortunately. But then I got all the way to the car rental place, and they were really easy to deal with. Of course, it was probably around midnight at the time, by the time I got to all of that.
And which car rental place did you use?
I used National Car Rental, which was pretty much one of the only ones that was open at the time, when I could pick up the car and drop off the car. Or some places are closed at certain times. At certain airports, depending on time of day and everything. Mainly it's just a few hours, like from midnight to about 4 or 5 a.m. when they're closed.
Which is, of course, when he needed them the most.
Mm-hmm.
But luckily, this company was available, so we didn't have to worry about him trying to find a hotel with...
dog friendly.
Yeah, that's dog friendly, and that would transport him there and back and so on. So... if you are going to be arriving late, use that company.
Yes. They were actually really nice, really good company. Got the Easy Pass, which is like a godsend. Because when you go down to Jersey and Baltimore and DC and everything on 95, everything's pretty much an Easy Pass.
They're tolls. So those that don't
yeah,
understand, it's tolls. And the car company had an Easy Pass installed, which means you can just go through and then they'll charge you that amount later.
Which is nice. Saved me from having to go out and get cash and all this other stuff. So anyway, so after the 16-hour flight, getting the rental car, getting the dogs to the rental car, it was another 13 to 15-hour drive down to South Carolina.
Sorry I didn't update y'all sooner, but we made it to all the New Jersey stuff, all the airport stuff. Just the boys are doing good, as you can see. They're just roaming around. potty at the Wally World. Yes, the Wally World, the RV stream. So, we're at the Wally World and I'm gonna let them eat a little bit, drink a little bit, and then we're gonna keep on going down the road. We're gonna at least get down below DC before 5:30 or rush hour or whenever. And then we will, come on, Bear, either take a nap or we'll keep on going. So we'll see where this journey takes us. So let's hope it all works out. I'm pretty, yeah, it will work out. It's just long journey. I had a decent few little naps on the plane, but nothing to write home about, so we will see. So letting them drink up a little bit, eat just a little bit, not much, just enough to put something in their bellies. Don't want a lot because they have been on a plane without enough food and then other things, and all shaken up, and just don't want them to hurt up too much. So we'll go from there.
I tried to sleep a little after I got down past DC. I tried to sleep a little bit. That didn't work out. I was so tired that I actually couldn't sleep. I got to that point to where you can't sleep after you get so tired. And so I was like, heck with it. I'll keep on going. So I was able to time my thing about every other rest stops, which the rest areas were about an hour apart from each other when you're driving. So about every 2 hours, or about every other rest stop, I was able to stop and let the dogs go pee, let me go use the restroom, and stretch our legs because all three of us were getting old.
But he did sleep on the plane a little bit, so it's not like he was up that whole entire time and driving unsafely. He did have a fairly decent amount of sleep on the plane, so I don't want people thinking that he was driving in an unsafe manner.
I couldn't drive if I was that sleepy, but I really wasn't sleepy, or you got past that point of not really sleeping. But anyway, I wasn't sleepy.
Plus he had adrenaline going.
Yeah. But got all the way down to South Carolina, and then once I finally got there, able to walk the dogs around, and then we had to get the kennel up, which was...
Yeah, so, at the beginning we said we didn't want to leave them with family because they don't allow them inside. Well, this time we ended up having to, because we are moving in with our in-law, or my in-laws, his mom and stepdad. So it's only until we can get the Airstream done, but we just had to weigh the pros and cons, and we just, in order for us to be able to do this as fast as possible and to make it work, we had to leave them outside, and I hate that. But we tried to make it as homey as possible, as dry as possible, give them plenty of room. And they haven't really had a chance to run around in grass in 4 years, so they're actually enjoying that right now.
Mm-hmm.
So he went and he fixed all that. He turned the rental car in, and then he just spent the next few days enjoying family before coming back and taking care of some things.
Yeah.
So all in all, would you say, how much would you say we ended up having to spend in US dollars?
Probably about 3 to 4. I don't know.
That's what I was thinking. It's about 4,000 US dollars. And to bring them here was about 4,000 US dollars. Plus, of course, we had kennels and things like that. So it is not a cheap situation at all. However, you won't leave your kids behind. And we weren't sure how long we would be in Hong Kong. I mean, we ended up staying for 4 years. So we definitely couldn't have just left them with family for 4 years. But if you're only taking a year trip, maybe you can leave them with your parents or brother or sister or cousin. That would be okay. You want to be able to have a trip around the world. But if you are looking to move to another country, then you need to be aware of the laws of the country and the transport and import and all of that, as well as looking at export. When we moved here, not only did we look at importing the dogs and what that looked like, but I was very much aware that I may not stay here forever. I was aware. I knew I wasn't going to be staying here forever. And I looked at what it was like to bring dogs elsewhere. And I looked at several. I didn't just look at the U.S. because honestly I didn't think I was moving back to the U.S. But I looked at other countries and what it would take for them. And that is another reason why we chose Hong Kong, was because it was an easy place to come in and out of without having to go through quarantines for most of the world. So it's something that you need to research extensively if you have pets. I have had friends that have cats. They have brought cats from South Korea. They did have to go through a quarantine, but they said it was perfectly fine. They got to visit the cat and it was clean and well taken care of. So if you are looking to move and you want to make a change and you want to find a country to move to save some money and be safe, Hong Kong is very safe. Hong Kong is an excellent choice if you have pets because of this whole experience. Now, yes, it is expensive and we have had our fair share of obstacles. I mean, if we had had just the money, we would just pay a pet relocation person and it would have been easy peasy lemon squeezy. But we didn't have that kind of money. And so we had to save for it. We had to find other options and kind of piecemeal their transport together. But in the end, I think it actually was the best for our family.
Oh, yeah.
It allows us to clean this house and redo some things with them not here that we don't have to worry about waiting to the very last minute to do. And they are getting taken care of. My niece is taking them on walks and feeding them and things like that. So that's relocation
In a nutshell.
in a nutshell. Both to Hong Kong and from Hong Kong. I recommend doing the research, but also just do it, because I'm really glad we had our dogs for these 4 years. They really have made this journey more enjoyable. And as far as, I'm not going to really go into it, but as far as, how can you travel with dogs when you don't have family? We have had friends look after them. Once we got a full-time helper, they would just stay with them until, we even had a part-time helper when we did our baby moon to Boracay. She came and stayed in our place and took care of them. So there are so many options. Don't worry about that.
Even when we came back for Christmas that first year.
Yeah, well, that year I think was friends of ours. And then we also watched their dog at one point. So once you get settled in here and you create a community and whatnot, there are so many options. And there are boarding places, but I don't feel like they're really necessary. I have a friend that has a cat. She's the one from South Korea. She just has friends that take care of her cat while she's gone. And it's not a big deal. Everyone just works together. So I wouldn't worry about that. You can still travel with your pets here. Anything else that we should add? Oh, they didn't poop or pee. Well, Duke pooped, you said.
Yes, he pooped.
On the way back. But they didn't at all coming here, and they didn't pee at all going back, which I'm really surprised with, because Bear has not been able to hold it 12 hours.
Oh, he held it until we got to the car rental place, and then right there on the walking path, he let it go.
Well, I don't blame him. We could just take some water.
Literally almost 2 minutes straight. It was crazy. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, people. I'm sorry. They were like, it's okay, man.
We just have water.
The car rental people, the ones right there at the parking garage, they were some of the nicest guys ever. really appreciate those 2 guys came out, just saying hey, bring me to the car and everything. It was some really pretty good guys.
And they helped out a lot. It was just really, really nice. So it's not that big of a deal. Most likely, like I said, Bear typically can't hold it anymore. He's getting older, and he's used to his 3 walks a day, his very long walks where he gets to pee on 20 different things each time.
Now he gets to now he gets to frolic in grass and try to eat mosquitoes and bees,
which he loves to do. But the point is, don't really be worried about it. It can happen, but you have pee pad in there or newspaper. You have something in there that will absorb it. And honestly, dogs don't like to go to the bathroom in their home, their space. Most of them don't. If they're confined to a small space, they don't want to go to the bathroom in there. So typically they will do their very, very best to hold it until they can get out. So typically that's not going to be a big deal, unless of course you have a dog that has bladder issues, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's it for today. I hope this was helpful for you if you are wanting to move abroad. There was a lot of information here because we were talking about coming and going and all of the changes that have occurred over the last 4 years. Again, please do your research. But thank you so much for joining us. Please remember to leave an honest rating and review, and to give us send us some information about you. Like, tell us who you are. Send us an email. Tell us about what your dreams for travel are. And I really hope to get to know you. Don't forget about the Facebook group, Family Adventure Travel Tribe on Facebook. And we will see you next time for episode 16, where I am talking with Karim from Spanish Educational Solutions about how you can raise a bilingual child, even if you are not bilingual yourself, and how that will help you in your travel life. And don't forget, you can find all of the show notes at thisindulgentlife.com/15. See you soon.